Hungarians Beyond the Borders, Határon, túli, magyarság. I recently shared a post about a Hungarian folk singing course focused on Moldova, the province of Romania, not the country Moldova which borders it. It struck me that many people, even of Hungarian descent, are unaware of how the borders of Hungary have shifted over the years. For this reason, the inclusion of folk songs from Romania or Slovakia in a Hungarian class confuses them. The most recent changing of the borders occurred in 1920 as a result of the Treaty of Trianon. I've avoided it up to now as it's a political hot potato. A friend wearing a Greater Hungary necklace was spat on when elsewhere in Europe. And on the other side, it's a rallying point for some of the most rabid right-wing Hungarian nationalists. But here we go. First, Hungarian borders before Trianon. Let's start with some context. Hungary was not always a small, isolated, landlocked country, and I don't just mean as part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In its time, Hungary was a major player. I was facing the prospect of spending a day or so mapping the various border changes when I found this map of all the lands owned by medieval Hungary, not including titles owned by kings considered foreign by Magyar historiography. Thank you, Cholima. With a bit of fiddling, I've roughly overlaid present political borders, and you might find it surprising. You'll see not only Romania and Moldova in there, but both the southern and northern Slavic states, Italy, Austria, most of Poland, and modern-day Ukraine. But yes, that was a very long time ago, and some parts of it were only under Hungarian control for under a decade. With the death of King Mátyás in 1490, Hungary's golden age was over. 36 years later, in 1526, Hungary suffered its greatest defeat in the Battle of Mohács, and the Ottoman Turks took over most of the country. By the 1600s, Hungary was divided into three, with Royal Hungary, controlled by the Habsburgs, to the north and west, the Principality of Transylvania to the east, this was quite a bit more than Transylvania proper, and the lands under direct Ottoman control in the middle. Hungary was not liberated from the Ottomans until 1699, and the downside of the Peace of Karlowitz was the Hungarians exchanged the Ottomans for a permanent Habsburg overlord. But that's another story. The shape of Hungary physically was then similar to that of the late 19th century. Now, for a bit of history, there was a brief war of independence in 1848 to 49, but in 1867 the Austro-Hungarian Compromise meant that the Habsburg monarchy became the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary. That is, Hungary again was independent, but the King of Hungary, and also the King of Croatia, was also the Emperor of Austria. So not a part of Austria, its own country. The borders at this time became for many famous Big Hungary that you can buy as pendants, posters, plaques and postcards. What happened after Trianon? So how did the borders get redrawn? So if we wind forward to the end of World War I, despite Hungary being a reluctant party to the war that Vienna and Germany were so keen on, when they lost it, it was Hungary that paid the greatest price. In 1920, the Treaty of Trianon meant that Hungary lost 70% of its territory. This included most of its natural resources, including 90% of its iron and 84% of its forests. But in some ways a bigger blow was that it also lost 60% of its total population. Now, it can be said that much of that territory was mostly inhabited by people who identified as not ethnically Hungarian, and nationalist movements were strong at that time. However, while that's true in part, the borders were drawn to exclude 28% of the Hungarian speakers, and no separate country was given to those who were ethnically German, who also had enclaves within the Hungarian borders. Whole ethnic Hungarian communities were now living in other countries, such as Romania and Czechoslovakia. And to this day, there's still about 3 million Hungarians beyond the current borders. These are called Határon túli magyarság. They are living in Romania, Slovakia, Serbia, Ukraine, Austria, Croatia and Slovenia. That's compared to 10 million who live within the current borders. The Hungarian diaspora also includes those who immigrated since the late 19th century, mostly to the West, US, Canada, Germany, etc. And these number up to 4 million Hungarians. We're not talking about them. It's important to note that the Határon túli magyarság are not just descended from Hungarians, but it refers to communities of Hungarian nationality who ended up outside Hungary's borders due to the borders shifting, and who still preserve their Hungarian identity while living in those neighbouring countries. Possibly many more ethnic Hungarians have assimilated due to legal, political and cultural challenges. Ironically, some of the old traditions lost in modern-day Hungary have been preserved outside of Hungary. For instance, in Romania, which has the largest Hungarian population of over 1 million, and most of the documented folk songs and dances are from Hungarians now living in Romania and Slovakia. While most of Hungary proper has lost many traditions, they are still living practice within the Hungarian communities living in other countries. If you're most familiar with the culture of Hungary within the modern borders, at a folk performance or táncás, you may come across music, songs, dance or costumes which are a little different from what you're used to. Indeed, I've seen virulent arguments online that is not Hungarian, when, if anything, it's more Hungarian than much of the popular folk traditions. For example, csárdás is a relatively recent style with German influences. I hope this video has given you an insight to how Hungarian culture survives beyond the borders of modern Hungary and how rich and varied it is. Do you have experience of this? Feel free to comment below. And 2 questions. First, if someone can be Hungarian without living in Hungary, what is it that makes them Hungarian? Second, is living in Hungary in itself enough to make you Hungarian? Until next time, Viszlát!